Hi, Irina. Hi, Janet. Hi, Ryan.
Morning, Bruce.
Good to hear from you. Do you miss me, Janet?
Always. I just saw you yesterday.
I haven't changed.
Me neither.
Is everybody on? Okay, so we're ready to go? So good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Cassie for arranging all this. I'd also like to thank her for arranging the hairstylist and makeup artist this morning. Okay, you can see what effect this had. All right, as a matter of fact, my wife did cut my hair on Sunday, and I think she's ready to take a training course of being a hairdresser. Anyway, we're in a very difficult situation. I know it's very emotional, and I think that the most important part is that we have to take care of our families. I, for one, I have 2 children, 2 in-laws who I consider as my children, and 6 grandchildren. So it's a very worrying time because I want to make sure that everybody is well. And unfortunately, we're just relegated to doing drive past their houses to drop off food and so forth. So it's a very, very, very sad time for us, for my wife and I, especially at Easter, but we're going to get through it. All right. As I told my daughter about 2-3 weeks ago, my beautiful daughter was a little bit frustrated with the kids staying at home, no schooling and so forth. And I said, you know, we're quite lucky because we've been in a bubble for most of our lives. We haven't had a lot of tragedy, a lot of angst to deal with. I was born many, many years ago, and I remember people coming home from the war. We have not been in a military war. We haven't been in concentration camps. But perhaps the scariest part of my life, my young life at one point, was in 1962 when we were involved with the Cuban crisis, where we thought that war was imminent. And I remember at that time that people were very scared. And I remember telling my parents that I was going to have to join the Army. That was a very scary time. This is not as scary because I feel that we're going to come out of it. The weather's going to get better, and most of us are well. So I think that's the most important thing. The other thing, although it's an emotional time, we also have to think of our businesses. But our businesses also become very emotional because we're dealing with our clients. And I was, with a lot of trepidation, at the end of March, I had to send out reports to all my clients about their financial situation with the investments that they have with me. I was very nervous about doing it because the markets had tanked, things were not good. And yet, it was something that we had to do, and it was good to be in contact with my clients. So we sent out about 20 reports every month to these clients, and I was extremely surprised and felt very good because all the clients came back with very, very nice comments. Okay, thank you very much. We know what's happening. We hope you are well. And it was very, very heartwarming to get that type of response. And as a matter of fact, I've had one client who is 88 years old. He's called me twice in the past month to see how I am doing, okay? He's not worried about himself. He called me twice to see, you know, how I was doing, and I couldn't believe it the second time. So he goes on to tell me, he says, you know what happened this morning? As I said, he's 88 years old. I said, no, what happened? And he lives up in Southampton. He says, well, my blue box blew down the driveway, and I went on my slippers to get it, and it had fallen into the ditch beside the road, and I fell into the ditch. I says, what? He says, yeah, I fell into the ditch, but I'm okay. So I said to him, and his wife was on the phone, Maureen, and I said to him, well, the next time that happens, the blue box goes into the ditch, you send your wife. Anyway, we all had a very good laugh. So we can all find a little bit of humor in this, okay? So we have to be the rocks for our clients, all right? We have to be in touch with them. We have to tell them, especially on the investment side, that things are going to turn around, everything is going to be okay. And it's just, to me, this is a great time for us, okay? It is an opportune time. Things are not good. People's health are not good, perhaps. It's a great time to sell life insurance. It's a great time to perhaps move money around from other institutions. For instance, if your clients have open accounts, say at the bank or something, they've taken losses, now's a good time to perhaps move some of that money. The other thing that I had a note here that we touch clients like nobody else can, okay? But we also need our emotion to pass on to them. We have to show them that we do care for them. So I think one of the most important things that I started with when this whole thing happened, I didn't panic, but what is important to me is my routine. My wife says I'm very stubborn, I'm very fixed in the way I do things, and that is absolutely true. So normally my routine in the morning is I get up at 4:30 in the morning. By 5:15, I'm on the road. I pick up a coffee, I pick up a paper, I go to the gym. I sit on the bike for anywhere from a half hour to an hour at the gym. Then I'll either work out with my trainer or play tennis. I play tennis at least twice a week early in the morning. Obviously, this has all changed. So I get up a little bit later in the morning. All right, I do go out, I get a paper, I get my coffee. Actually, I'm sorry, before I do all that, I have my porridge in the morning, which is part of my routine. I'm doing exercises in the house. I'm doing push-ups against the back of the couch. And my daughter called me one morning to tell me that she just come back from a run. She says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, I just finished doing the push-ups on the back of your mother's couch." And I said, it's going to be a good excuse for her when all this is over. She's going to tell me that I've broken the back of the couch and we need to buy a new couch. I'm just waiting. Okay. I also do squats in the morning. So this is part of my routine. I do have my porridge, do my little exercises. I go out, I get a paper, I get a cup of coffee, always Tim's. And I come back to the house and have either eggs or bacon. I make it myself because every day when I'm at the gym, when I leave the gym, that's what I do. I go to a restaurant, I go to my diner. I go have my 2 and 2, which is 2 sausages, 2 eggs, and 2 pieces of bacon. I do that every morning. I'm friendly with all the staff, and it's quite embarrassing sometimes because if it's quiet in the restaurant, the chef will come out behind the restaurant and come to sit down with me and have a coffee. Okay, I'm friendly with everybody. So it's very important for me to get that routine. I also, when I come to work the same day every morning. Normally my health club is at Royal Windsor Drive and Southdown Road. So, and then I come along Lakeshore, over to Dixie, up Dixie into Michael's office on Matheson. And I'm still doing that. There's a faster way of doing it. I could take the 403 now and come right here, but I also take that route. My route that I've been taking for years, because there's a Tim Hortons along the way that I stop at. All the ladies wave to me. So the important thing for me is my routine. And I do come into the office every day, still working at least 4 days a week. Maybe Fridays I'll take off. But I love getting out of the house and I love coming to the office and doing what I have to do. And I was thinking this morning, I was driving in, that my best thinking is done when I'm driving. It's a funny thing, but I'm very relaxed when I'm driving, and my best thinking is done when I was driving. So a couple of things occurred to me this morning, or one thing in particular, and I'm going to tell you it's a bit of a story, and you're going to hear a couple of stories with clients. But I've had this client since 1992. Had $1 million term policy with me, and in 2002 we renewed it, and then after that he had a brain bleed. He was a fitness guru. He rode. One day he felt some moisture at the back of his head, and he had a broken vessel. He went to the hospital, so he became uninsurable. But I've known him for many years. He was an entrepreneur. He's been involved in mining companies. And I have followed him around all over the place. This company would close down and this company would open up and so forth. And I think in 2013, he called me again and said that he's opening up another junior mining company. They needed some benefits. So I went in to see him and saw the president. He was the chairman of the board, saw the president of the company. We set up some benefits. And at that time, we also, because of the small group, we weren't able to set up a lot of life insurance or long-term disability like we wanted to do, And I suggested at the time that we put in extra insurance policies for the executives and critical illness insurance to top up the long-term disability. Everybody agreed at that point. But getting back to his term policy, back in 2015, the term policy was coming up for renewal, or we were coming to the point where the conversion period was going to end. And I went to him and I said, you know, it's time that we have to do something about this. So we arranged a meeting with him and his controller, CFO, Kevin. And Kevin was suggesting to me that we convert it to a universal life policy because he had a universal life policy. I'm talking about Kevin having a universal life policy. So we sat down this particular morning and we started talking about the universal life policy. And I explained to my client that we could put extra money into the policy. He says, you know, what would we do with that money? And I said, well, there's various funds that are available. And we started talking about those, and he asked me what the management charges were. They're quite expensive. And he says, you know, this is very finicky. So by coincidence, that evening, or that coming evening, I was going to go see a client to sell the daughter a $100,000 whole life policy. So I said to him, and I said to Kevin, do you want something where there's no fuss and no mess? And maybe Cassie's going to show there's this little schedule that I want to show. She's going to put up this she's going to put this up on the screen. So this was in my bag. This little sketch was in my bag about explaining a whole life policy. I was going to discuss this with my client that evening, and I pulled this out of the bag and I went over it a little bit with him, and he says, well, what would that cost me? I said $60,000, and because he was 62 or 63 at the time. And he said, oh, this looks interesting. And then Kevin and I went out for lunch, and we sort of ended the discussion with no conclusion. Kevin and I went out for lunch, and when I came back, he's waiting for me in the lobby with this piece of paper, and he says to me, let's do the paperwork. I'll give you a check tomorrow. And that's what happened. And that's how I sold a $62,000 premium on a whole life policy. This is probably the largest single premium that I've ever taken since I've been in the business. I've been in the business a long time. So I sold $1 million policy for $62,000 that day. And that evening I went and sold a $100,000 whole life policy for $1,500 a year. So that's my business. I'll sell anything from a $250,000 term policy upwards. And that's what I do. And I still work in the evenings. I think we can take this off, Cassie. Okay. So getting back to this particular client, so I did the paperwork, went the next day and picked up the check. But meanwhile, we still had this group insurance going for this particular client, and we built it up to 10, 12, 13 employees. I worked this policy with my son-in-law, Doug. He does a lot of the groundwork, and I just do a little bit of talking with the clients. But what happened with one of the employees, we did some individual insurance with him 2 or 3 years ago, and he called me up, I guess about 6 months ago, and he wanted to add another $1 million a term to his insurance. It wasn't very expensive. I think it was $600 or $700 a year. But he, working for this company actually has a producing gold mine in Africa. And when we did the insurance on him, it didn't turn out exactly the way we wanted, because they excluded the country that he was traveling to as part of the policy. So, and I called him up and I said, you know, they're going to issue the policy, but if you go to, I think it was Burkina Faso, if you go to this country, you're not going to be covered. Anyway, he did accept the policy, and he's made arrangements with his employer not to go there. Anyway, I filed this in the back of my mind about this situation in Africa, excluding the travel ban and so forth. And one of the executives, actually the CEO of the company, has $2 million of life insurance with us and two $250,000 critical illness policies. So remembering this, and I was asked in February to provide a summary for the CEO of these policies. And we do this one-page summary, which I should have shown this, but anyway, we can do that another time. Anyway, I did send them a summary back in February of his life insurance, but I also added some comments. Okay, I was thinking about this, and I also added some comments that we'd recently done a policy on employee where traveling to Africa was excluded, and it might be a good time now to take that 10-year term policy, convert it to a 20-year policy, and also take the critical illness policies and go from 10-year term to permanent term to 75. Anyway, as usual, sent it off, didn't hear anything. And about 2 weeks ago, they said, yes, we're interested in doing this. What do we have to do? We want some more information. Anyway, I provided them with some more information. And then the unthinkable happened a week ago Thursday, or 2 weeks ago Thursday almost. Sun Life, who I do most of my business with, notified us that they were increasing the rates, universal life rates, whole life insurance rates, and critical illness rates. They're increasing the rates effective the 20th of April, which was this past Monday. So again, you know, we have the pandemic, and then we're sort of hit with this situation of increasing rates. But for me, it's an opportunity. Why is it an opportunity? Because I had a couple of clients that were dangling, this client in particular. I also had another client as a referral. They were looking at some term insurance and joint last to die insurance whole life. So this was an opportunity to sort of press the issue and say, listen, rates are going up. We got to do something about this now if you want to save some money. Emailed the client with the critical illness policies and the term policy, and yep, we're going to go ahead with it. We got approval from the board. We got the form on Friday just in time. So we submitted that, and the other client that I was dealing with for the joint last to die policy, we got that done. So last week, because of the situation with Sun Life, we ended up submitting 7 applications. So I've always taken the attitude that when there's an issue, when there's a problem, it also creates an opportunity. I hate to say this, but sometimes our good fortune depends on people's misfortune. This has been an adage in our industry for so many years. And I still say that it is an excellent time now for people to sell life insurance because there is a huge need out there. And I think it's a good time for agents to take a look around at their friends, family, people that they've been ignoring all these years. There are so many people in front of our noses that we can ask whether or not they want life insurance. It's just available to us all the time. As a matter of fact, we had a call yesterday. Client called to tell us that his mother was not well and they wanted to change, he wanted to change her address on her life insurance policy. I had sold this policy to this lady back in 1994. So I was talking to the son, he said, I have power of attorney. So we got the change of address, and I said to him, do you have life insurance? He says, no. He says, I have group insurance. When I'm single, I really don't need it now. But, you know, I'm going to pursue that with him at some point because there are options for him to have. And this is an opportunity to just go and ask anybody that you know if they need life insurance. As I said before, it's a terrific opportunity to go back to your clients that have money at the banks, TFSAs and so forth, to start moving money. People, I have one client in particular, he keeps sending me about $15,000 every 2 weeks because he feels it's an excellent time to buy into the marketplace. So I'm going to tell you another story about, well, I've got a number of stories that we're going to talk about now. So I had a call last week from a client. Roz called me and she says, do you remember me? I said, yes. She says, my dad died last night. So I started talking to her, was very sad. And then I said, how's your mother doing? She says, as a matter of fact, she's on the phone. And Norma got on the phone. I started talking to her. And she said to me, I'm so glad that I'm talking to the person that sold us the policy. So I'm thinking to myself, that's beautiful to hear. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I've been in the business too long, but that's why I'm still here. I love the business. I love talking to the clients. I love being able to deal with the death benefit. I think we've had 3 death claims in the past week or so. I've talked to all the families, and they know me, I know them, and it's a very good feeling, especially when a client says to you, it's so nice to talk to somebody that we knew that sold the policy to us, rather than dealing with a company or just calling the death claim department or whatever. Okay, so it's wonderful to hear. So one of the clients that called me, and I said to her, I was speaking to the daughter, not the same daughter. She said to me, I said, you know, Lori, I'm just looking at your file here, and I noticed that you cashed your whole life policy in 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't realize it. And this is one of those things where, you know, she's probably one of my C clients, if you categorize in that way. And I just never got around to talking to her. And I said, you know, you really should have some life insurance. She says, yes, I know. When I get through this after my dad's death, we're going to talk. I do need some other life insurance. So these opportunities are all around us, all right? So another situation was I got a note, so I guess about 10 years ago, when I was in my own office in Oakville, there was a fellow working next door to us. He was a director of a large company. They had about 5,000 employees. And he came in to see me one day, and he kind of had a couple of universal life policies, and he had a term policy on his wife. And I ended up becoming the agent of record for those policies. And every year since then, we would get notices the policies are going to lapse. I would email him, never hear back from him, and the policies would get paid. Never was able to get a meeting with him or anything. Anyway, about 4 weeks ago, we got a notice that his wife's Bank of Montreal policy for $1 million was coming up for renewal. So the premium was going from $1,400 a year to $10,000 a year. Now, I know that she'd been sick. She's been fighting cancer for about 6-7 years. She's in remission. She's great. And I said to him, I sent him an email. I said, you know, we got this notice, and perhaps we might think of converting this. So never expected to hear from him. About a week after I sent the notice out, he calls me. Haven't heard from him in almost 10 years. Called me out of the blue. He says, yeah, I think we should sit down and we should discuss the policy. So I actually went over to his office, and we sat at the end. We each sat 20 feet apart from each other at the end of a very large boardroom table. And we started to talk. We talked about 5 minutes. We talked for about 5 minutes about this policy and what the options were. We can convert it to universal life. I told him the premium was about $22,500 a year. Didn't seem to bother him. And then all of a sudden he says, you know, I tried to get some life insurance on myself last year. I wasn't able to get it. I have a little bit of heart issue. I have this, I have that. And I said, well, would you like me to attempt to try and get some life insurance on you? He says, no. He says, I think if we convert this policy, I think we'll be fine. We just want it for the estate. So I said, that's fine. And we started talking to him. I said, how old are you? And he says, I'm 67. I said, you're still working? I see. How long are you going to work for? He said, I really don't know, but I feel good. I want to keep working. I enjoy my job. I said, I assume you have group benefits? He says, yes. I said, do you ever look at them? He says, no, not really. I said, did you have insurance through your group benefit? He says, yes, I did. I said, probably at the age of 65, they were cut in half. Oh, I don't think so. Anyway, he had his benefit booklet on his computer. So we started he started looking, and he says, oh my goodness. He says, you're right. And I said to him, so did you have long-term disability also? He says, I have long-term disability. I said, let's take a look at that. He says, oh my goodness, that finished when I was 65 years old. He had no idea whatsoever. And then I said to him, are you collecting your Canada pension benefit? And he says, no, I was waiting till I was 70 years old. I says, well, why would you do that? I says, what happens if you die today? Oh, he says, well, I guess I wouldn't get any. And I says, yeah, you wouldn't get any, and your wife would receive a very small benefit because she's also collecting, and she's at the max. So her survivor's benefit would be next to nothing. All right. Anyway, we went through a couple of other things, and I said, sort of finished the conversation, and I was ready to leave. I said, I hope you found this very informative. And he says to me, As a matter of fact, I found it very depressing. So I started to laugh. He says, nothing to do with you. He says, but I have a fancy lawyer, I have a fancy accountant, and I have a fancy investment advisor, and nobody has told me any of this stuff. And he said, I find it very interesting that somebody like you would tell me this. So we bring a lot of added value to our clients, and we don't realize it. I once saw a video 3 or 4 years ago saying that we are more than an advisor. And I think we have that somewhere. Maybe Cassie at some point will shoot that out. But we are more than an advisor. We are more than an advisor. We're friends. Okay, we have good advice. We do a lot of work that the accountants don't do. We do a lot of things that the lawyers don't do. Wills, I don't do wills, but we suggest wills. I mean, when was the last time you asked your clients whether they had wills or not? It's still amazing to me that a number of people, just a large number of people don't have wills. And getting back to this client that I was talking to, I said to him, by the way, when you turn 65, did your investment advisor set up a little RRIF for you where you can take out $2,000 a year and get a break on the tax? He says, I have no idea what you're talking about. So here again, okay, it's a small thing, but it's these little things that we do. And I always had, many years ago, I worked in the furniture industry, and I had a Jewish boss, and he said to me once, he says, if we take care of the nickels and dimes, the dollars will take care of themselves. And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. Are there any questions at this point?
We have one question from Doug.
Yeah.
He's asking if we could share the whole life term again with a description of what you did.
Go ahead. Yep. Yeah, so this is a description. It's a hokey description of a whole life policy. It's, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So with the whole life policy, you know, we have a guaranteed premium. You know that we have a guaranteed death benefit, and we know that we have a guaranteed cash value in the policy, and that's exactly what I showed here. And I showed then the last little box is the dividends, which are not guaranteed. And so I explained to the client that on death, you would take the guaranteed death benefit and the dividends that are turned into paid up additions. That is the death benefit. And if you wanted to cash the policy in, you would get the guaranteed cash value and you would get the cash value of the dividends. Very simple. And of course, I would have an illustration showing all this. So I don't know what other question you would like to know about this. Just a very simplistic, so the question is, how do you convince whole life versus term? You know, that is another discussion whatsoever. Okay, so when I talk to clients, my first inclination is to make sure that they're insured properly. So term insurance does a beautiful job of that because it's inexpensive and you can get the right amount of insurance for the client. But there comes a point with the client where do they need insurance forever? And that's where that discussion comes in. Okay, it can start at an early age, it can start at a later age, or whatever. Okay, so you have two choices. You have universal life or whole life. And you know, the way Sun Life has positioned this product, actually, they're selling it as an investment. All right, if you talk to the insurance specialists at Wood Gundy or Nesbitt Burns or Royal Bank, Dominion Securities, they're selling this as an alternative investments. I've had a couple of instances where I've gone to clients' houses, the clients of mine, and they say to me, yeah, you know, I have this other insurance policy that the Dominion Security advisor suggested to me. I said, well, so how did he suggest it to you? He said, well, if I have $25,000 a year available, you can buy this other investment. So when I remember one in particular, he did a joint lasted eye policy, and the amount of insurance was $1,767,000. Okay, and it was based on a $25,000 premium. So there was no need ascertained here. They're selling it strictly as an investment. So perhaps that's the way you should have positioned it. but I do believe that everybody needs insurance forever. I've had whole life policies since the 80s. Okay, they're just great policies. They've increased dramatically, cash values and so forth. It works very, very nicely. And I don't know if this answers your question, but I think I think you have to ask the client, you have to tell the client about these products. Any other questions? That's it? Okay. So getting back to that I did the conversion, the 2 critical illness policies and the 10-year term to a 20-year term that we did last week. As today, when I was driving in the car, I was thinking to myself, you know what? There's another employee at the company who would be eligible for the same thing, perhaps. And when I came into the office this morning, I pulled out his file and I looked at it. It's on my desk, okay, Eric. And I looked at it, and yes, we did this policy. We did his 10-year term policy back in 2017, and we did the critical illness policy for $250,000 at the same time. So Sun Life, and I think some of the other companies have this, where if they have a 10-year term policy, within the first 5 years of the 10-year term policy, you can change it or convert it to a 20-year term policy with no medical. And we've done a lot of that. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to do that type of situation today, all right? Any excuse that you can have to call a client is great. Even on my older life insurance policies, what we're doing today, and with my investment clients, just to be in touch, we're calling them up and saying, you know what, haven't spoken to you for a while. How old are your kids? Well, they're 26 or 27. So perhaps we should make them the contingent beneficiaries on these policies where we had the estate. Any little thing that you can do, okay, call the client, any little excuse, all right, is important, okay, because you can do this work for your clients. And at the end of the day, it proves very, 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 very fruitful for everybody. It's getting in touch with the clients. But to me, the most important thing is that you should be doing is looking around you, looking at your family, looking at your friends. Are all your friends clients of yours? I can say honestly that the bulk of my friends, the bulk of the people that I know are clients, and it's great. Who else, if somebody dies, who else would you like to have handle the death benefit? Your friends, your family, they want you, okay? It's very important. Any other questions?
I do have 2 more.
Yep.
The first one is, how do you convince whole life versus term when people are cost conscious?
Oh, that was from Doug again?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's all you have to do is say to the client, first of all, look at what happens to the term rates, the guaranteed term rates within the policy. Look what's going to happen to these rates if you aren't healthy. That's the big issue. And I have a lot of clients now that are in their 50s and 60s, and I come across health issues that I never thought we had before. Okay, a little bit of diabetes, a little bit of that. Look at this business with the travel, for instance. And I think with the travel, forget about the travel to Africa. I think with this virus, I think there's going to be whole changes in the life insurance industry where traveling to other countries is going to become an issue. So, you know, the old saying, hold on to what you got. I think this really, okay, and it's important. And I think the cost is a cost, okay? I've never, you know, I've done most of my business with Sun Life over the years. Price has never been an issue with me. It's about the service, it's about the death benefit, it's about being able to tell clients that within 2 weeks of somebody dying, we're gonna get a check. So price has never been an issue with me. And if the client has a few extra dollars, I think it's a good time, and you know that, I think it's a good time to be able to talk to them about whole life or universal life. Yes, there is an extra cost, but if you do the schedule in the long run, all right, especially for a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old, to buy whole life insurance now versus term, if they can afford it now, in the long run, they're going to save a lot of money and they're going to have that insurance forever. Okay, you can get 20-year pay plans, you get 10-year pay plans, you can premium offset, you can do all these things. So in the long run, permanent insurance becomes a lot less expensive.
The last question, Bruce, is how do you decide on the insurance company to use? So Sun Life versus Navy versus RBC?
Yeah, so, you know, that's a good question. I started with Sun Life back in 1985. In those days, we were captive agents. In the mid-90s, they set us loose. They said we were going to become brokers. So again, as I said, price has never been an issue with me. Loyalty has been a big issue with me because with Sun Life, and I'll talk about Sun Life, except for a period of 2002 to 2005, and I'll tell you what happened with that. Okay, when Sun Life would tell me something and we shook hands on it, they lived up to their word. I was president of the Agents Advisory Committee back in the 90s. They were very decent to deal with. They listened to us. I remember at one time with Sun Life, of course, when there was new management, the first thing they did, they wanted to change the commission schedule. So commissions were always going to be less. And I remember at one point, vice president, as a matter of fact, I remember his name. His name was Brian Hunter. Some of you may know that name. He came from Manulife, and I think he's back there now. So they changed the contract, but left us out in the cold on the old contract because when we sold a policy, we were supposed to get the bonus paid over 12 months. So when they changed the contract, anybody that had sold a policy, say in December, was not going to get that bonus for the next 11 months. And I remember calling him up one day and I said, you know, Brian, we have a problem with the contract. He says, what's that? And I said, you know, if you have a chance, why don't you, can we get together? So he lived in Kitchener. My office was in Oakville. He came out to Oakville one day, one afternoon. We sat down for 20 minutes and I said, listen, here's the score on this. We're not going to get our bonuses on these policies for the next 12 months or 11 months, whatever it is. I said, it's not about money. This is a question of fairness. He called me back 2 days later. He says, thank you very much. You just cost me $300,000. So Sun Life has always been that way. 2002, when Sun Life bought Clarica, there was a whole shakeup. The Clarica people took over the distribution of the Sun Life products. It was an absolute disaster. But true to their word, in 2005, Don Stewart, who was the chairman of the board of Sun Life at that time, called 20 of us together from all across Canada, apologized for the mess that they had made with this, encouraged us to come back and do business with Sun Life, threw some money at us. And I've continued to do business with Sun Life over the years. As a matter of fact, in 2002, Clarica wanted me to sign another contract, which I refused. So they actually took my book of business away from me. I wasn't allowed to access my book of business for about a year. And about a year after all this happened, I got a letter from a client saying that, with a check, saying that their policy, they forgot to pay the premium on their policy, and it would have probably lapsed. And I sent it off. I sent it off actually to Don Stewart, and within 2 weeks, the check was cashed and the policy was reinstated. By coincidence, the same thing happened about a week after that. Again, I emailed Don Stewart, and I said to him at the time, you know what, Don, my clients want me to be their agent. They don't want anybody else. And within a month, I had my book back. So there's no alternative for me to do business other than Sun Life, except in the case where they don't have a product, their term product, they don't go below $250,000. So I will use Empire Life or I'll use Manulife. But the other thing, when you deal with one company for a very long time, they get to know you, they get to trust you, you get to trust them. And the relationship that I have with Sun Life, especially with the underwriters, is very important to me. Okay, because as I said, my client base is getting a little bit older. We have difficult cases. I'm able to talk to the underwriter, discuss it. She trusts me, I trust her. So it's the familiarity that's very important to me, and the loyalty to us, to me, and the loyalty I have for them. It all comes into play. I also found from dealing with other companies, so I've done business with Manulife, that time period 2002 to 2005. We did business with Manulife. I've done business, a little bit of business with Royal Bank, dealing with the Bank of Montreal now. I just find administratively, it's just too difficult to deal with too many companies. You know, I've got clients with policies with Manulife, policies with Sun Life. Unfortunately, we don't have a platform like we do with the investment products where we can, you know, pull all the different fund companies that we deal with. We don't have a platform where we can pull all the insurance policies together. And I do send, for our larger clients, we do send out summaries to the clients, but it's all manual. And we have to make sure, we have to go through the file to make sure we have all the policies and so forth. And it has happened where we've missed a policy. So I just find it a lot easier to deal with one company. That's it? Okay. So I think that's about it. If there's anything else, we've been going for almost 45 minutes. I think if there's anything else, if no more questions, that's great. Thank you very, very much. And if anybody has any questions or they want to talk to me, Cassie knows where I am. I'm Bruce at bayshire.ca. Thank you. Nice talking to everybody.